Well, welcome back to our Women in Blockchain Initiative Spotlight Series. Today, we are so excited to have such a wonderful leader in this space and also a leader who's working on a use case that promotes women in this space. We have Denelle Dixon here with us. Denelle, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit, tell us your position, about Stellar Development Foundation, and
Sure.
kind of the basics that we need to know?
Sure. Denelle Dixon, and I'm the CEO and Executive Director of the Stellar Development Foundation. The foundation itself is focused on shepherding the code base for the Stellar Network. And the Stellar Network is an open, decentralized, permissionless blockchain that's really super focused on payments, asset issuance, and particularly cross-border payments and remittances. So our mission at the Stellar Development Foundation is creating equitable access to the global financial system. And we achieve that mission through leveraging Stellar and working with the ecosystem and all these really phenomenal creators out there that are building on Stellar to really create network effects and to grow the ecosystem and to grow Stellar.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit something about you as a person. What do you like to do outside of work or in your spare time? Who are you, off the clock?
Yeah, so I run every day. I run every morning, and that really gets my brain calmed down a bit from all of it. We have 5 kids. We have 5 boys actually,
Wow.
from the ages of 11 to 20, and so and they're all home right now because of COVID. And
Yeah.
so we have had just a crazy busy life this last year, as everyone has. And so I spend a lot of time with them and my partner. And I also love to read, although I'd have to just be honest and tell you that I haven't read a book in probably like a month and a half. And that's just super unlike me because I love reading, but it's just been really busy.
Wow. So much going on, but so admirable. That's amazing being able to balance this. And you have extensive background and experience in the legal field. You're a lawyer by trade, as well as having, a ton of experience leading notable internet companies like Mozilla. How did you get involved with blockchain? What led to that crossover?
Yeah, so I think I rely a lot on my legal roots and my legal training. That's one of the things that, I was a trial lawyer my first, I'd say 10 years of my professional life. I loved it, thought it was super fun. But what that caused me to think about is always like goals, strategies, and tactics. And so I think about that in every single thing that we do. And so that sort of has led me to this, even when I was a trial lawyer, I embarked on this journey to really understand businesses. And so much of what I did then was learning about the clients that I worked with and their businesses and understanding what they were doing and really going deep on it. And so that just caused me to have like a really strong connection to technology and to business. And so when I was at Mozilla and spending a lot of time just focusing on the internet space and technology generally, I dabbled a little bit in understanding blockchain, but then I got introduced to Jed, and Jed and I really hit it off, and I really loved what Jed was doing here at SDF, and so we sort of came together in that. I felt like there was a ton that I learned on the what I call the content side of the web that we could apply to sort of the finance or the payment side of the web. And so that actually is a lot of the reason, like we did a lot of things wrong when we were building the internet. And I feel like or wrong at the time, we thought they were 1,000% right. But I felt like we could take a lot of those lessons. Like, initially we chose not to engage with regulators around privacy and security. We said, we know what we're doing, leave us alone. And I think now what I've learned is that that was a mistake, and that what we should have done is engage early and often. And so we do that at SDF with respect to blockchain and just the financial pieces of, creating standards and interoperability. So it's a really interesting connection in terms of really growing up in like the internet days and really figuring out how to leverage that and bring that knowledge over here to make sure that we kind of can do this a little bit better and maybe right.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you were able to bring those insights that you learned with these other organizations that were still mission driven and still, advocating open infrastructure and being able to apply that to what you're working on now. That's amazing. So Stellar has stated their goals are to enhance the existing financial system in a way that's transparent and efficient. It's a little bit different from some other crypto projects out there that are all about disruption. Tell us a little bit about that philosophy and how Stellar is able to achieve those goals.
Yeah, I think that this is another one of those learnings. I think that from if you're really trying to disrupt an environment or infrastructure, you can do it from within. And actually, it's much easier to disrupt through cooperation than actually to like really come in and sort of change it all, because you have to get so much acceptance. And when you're dealing with financial infrastructure, it's something that hasn't really changed for like 50 years, right?
Yeah.
But it's really hard to create that change because it's very fractured. There's a lot of challenges in terms of building that language, that communication that's going to work. But if you can actually take Stellar and you can take and create interoperability between Stellar and the existing financial rails so that they can talk to one another, you don't have to change everything on the existing Rails side. You can just enhance it by leveraging the language of Stellar. So that's really what we try to do, to be able to, frankly, it's really important to me that there's not a single end user that really needs to know that they're leveraging blockchain technology. It really is that the money is being transferred, for example, from one bank account to another bank account. The rails are being utilized in between, but the end user doesn't have to understand, much the same way that the end user doesn't have to understand what HTTPS does on the web, but it's really helping them and creating value for them. So I think that's the important way that I think we look at this. Instead of, we can create disruption and change, but do it in a way in cooperation with the existing authorities and the regulatory bodies that already focus on these, and the banking infrastructure, which, it's going to be really hard to change in one fell swoop. So why not interoperate with it and make it work seamlessly?
And that's pretty amazing, the foresight that was there, because I'd say a lot of these other projects now, interoperability is like the number one issue with how do we work together. So that's a really nice approach, I think, to making this accessible to people so that they, like you said, they can use it with ease and accessibility. So tell us a little bit about the challenges that maybe come with all this, and that might be industry challenges, legal challenges. You guys have had amazing growth in your company. What sticks out as something you would give somebody a forewarning and say, here's what you could run into if you're going down this path?
Yeah, I think that the largest challenge to all of this is when you're creating an ecosystem and really trying to grow an ecosystem, you need network effects. And so network effects, it sounds like a really complicated word, but just think about it in terms of, one thing happens and then it creates change and opportunity for another thing, and they can work together to grow and grow and grow and make the thing bigger. And network effects is really hard because it's that whole thing where people always talk about, was it the chicken or the egg? Like, where does it start and what started it and how do you make it grow faster? So the hardest thing about doing what we want to do and creating this ecosystem that is vibrant and amazing and full of developers out there that are so interested in building and creating value for their local constituents is just that you need to make sure that we're focused on bringing volume to each of them through the transaction so that they actually can have sustainable businesses. So I think that's the largest challenge. I'll also say that I think, not surprisingly, when you're using new technology, one of the things that people do is focus on the technology and not so much on the interface. And so we did this in the early days of the web, where it was not so simple to get onto the web. And we then focused on usability and making it simple for users. And that, I think, is the other challenge, is that we sort of need, the technology is so important. And for those who care about it, we need to be able to speak to it. But it doesn't always need to be about the technology. It needs to be about what that technology is solving and how it's solving the problems for the end users, whether they're small businesses or humans. So we need to think about it from that standpoint. And I think those are the two biggest issues that I think that we have to tackle. The third one is regulations and just the regulatory frameworks, but we can work with those, and constantly with new technologies, you have to do that. But that's the third area of challenge.
That kind of leads me into my next question, because you talk about usability as a priority, and cryptocurrencies are infamous now for, promoting financial inclusion. And what does that mean to the 1.7 billion people who are unbanked or underbanked around the world? And so what is Stellar's approach? I know that ethos of financial inclusion is very core, I think, to your mission. And so tell us how somebody in that position could interface with something like the Stellar Network.
Yeah, well, I mean, the value to something like Stellar, which is open and permissionless, and you can build on it, will help you if you need help to be able to integrate, is that the amazing thing is we don't actually have to create and solve those problems from where we sit for each region. So the greatest thing about it is, like, for example, there are companies in Africa that are building on Stellar that are focusing on the problems within their area. And so they're focusing on how to solve things like when people have to move between regions because they're being kicked out of one country or one area because of discrimination or challenges there.
Yeah.
This company called Leaf Global is actually focusing on how to use the Stellar network and how to use a wallet, just a digital wallet that they can put on their phone. So they don't have to carry the currency with them. They can just have it in their wallet and they have it accessible from one location to the next when they get there.
Wow.
So these are things that I think that, when I talk about what is so awesome and the power of open source, the power of a permissionless blockchain, it is this focus on use cases. You don't have to solve the use cases from California, which is where our headquarters are. In fact, we're not equipped to do that because we don't actually know all the challenges in each of the regions. And so we want to work with these individual companies and these people that are creating these ideas, but we want them to be able to solve them locally and to be able to utilize the network to do so. But for the most part, focusing on the unbanked and the underbanked all over the world, it's leveraging this technology that's really simple that you can use from your cell phone, and not high quality cell phones either. They can be cell phones with lower battery size and lower memory space to still be able to engage with the financial infrastructure. From that standpoint, it's a remarkable tool, and it allows people who don't have access to bank accounts because they're marginalized or they're discriminated against because they don't have the right income level or they don't have the right the identity, and they can just create this wallet and be able to have and save and store value for themselves and to create some financial independence, which is pretty remarkable.
I agree. I think that's key, that you're empowering these people to take agency over their own, like solve their own, like human-centered, right, approach problems. You're giving them the tools, and that's really important and needed, that we're not coming in with here's our whole financial plan to,
Exactly.
I think that's incredible that you're bringing in the user, and giving them the ability to empower themselves. So that's great. So we talked about financial inclusion, um, among other social issues. How do you think cryptocurrency in general, or the Stellar Network specifically, is able to promote things like gender equity and empower women specifically? How will this technology, impact this whole group of people?
Yeah, so the technology itself, again, creates that fundamental language where there's an ability to be able to work with existing financial infrastructure to do so, and to build on it to create tools for individuals and businesses to be able to do that. When it comes to women, for example, what we do know is that anytime that women have the opportunity to engage in the finance and to have access to financial tools and products, it improves the GDP of each country. That's just math,
Yeah.
right? The more people that are engaged in providing economic support for families and for companies and for businesses, the better it's going to be for everyone. And so these women tend to be marginalized from receiving bank accounts. They actually they're not involved in the traditional workforce as others might be sometimes. And so they don't have the tools to be able to get access to bank accounts most of the time in certain regions. And so what this does is, again, it allows them access to financial products, financial services, to be able to store and access their own kind of wealth creation for themselves, and to be able to contribute to the economic realities of their family and of their local economies, which then brings up the whole economy for the country. So it's, again, I feel like I say this sometimes, it's just not rocket science. It's actually really simple. The
Yeah.
more people that we can include, the more that it's going to improve the situation for everyone. So I think that that's the way that we look at this. And I'm very focused on the gender equality issues, because I think that it creates the opportunity for just real creativity in everything, right? If we allow everyone to participate in the financial system, but also in creating tools that are going to improve the behavior and improve the situations for businesses and for individuals, it actually brings about like change for like real change. And so that's
Critical
what I think is really
innovation.
important about
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's something we take for granted in the Western world, or people around us. So I'm glad we have leaders that are aware that these issues are, not everyone, not every woman in the world is, allowed
Yeah.
to participate in some of these systems. So
It's
thank you.
actually one of the things that's really important too. It's not, I mean, what we actually have the same things happen here in the US. And I think it's a really interesting thing when women don't participate in traditional financial, or I mean, in the traditional workforce,
Yeah.
and they don't have access to the same things. So it's actually something that can create that opportunity everywhere. We do tend to be more focused outside the US because that is a market that needs, this access even more deeply, because there's a lot of banks around down the street and opportunities here, but it is everywhere, truly.
Yeah, and I to even add on to that, the wealth creation that's happening right now is strongly happening in the cryptocurrency area, which is male dominated, and so that opportunity
Yeah.
to create wealth for women is available right now, and needs to be visible and made aware for that foundational kind of laying opportunity for women to join in on that. So.
For sure.
Awesome. So we've talked about challenges. Tell us about your wins. What are your big wins, your big milestones that you've had with Stellar that you're very proud of?
Yeah, so I've been here for 2 years now, and it feels like so much longer, and not in a bad way. It actually just feels like we've gone through such huge iterations of the organization as well as the network during that time. And I think that, when I say I'm proud of something, that the truth is that I just like sit in awe sometimes of the people that we work with, and the people that, not just the folks internally, like the team that we've built at SDF is just a remarkable team that is able to be so committed and so challenged and so dedicated to all of the different things that we're doing. And I do sit in awe a lot of them individually, but also just in terms of the different organizations that are building on top of Stellar. A lot of these I actually don't get to know personally because there's so many of them, but I get to know the story. And for me, so much of what life is about your story and your journey. And the journey and the story of these companies about how they came together to build on Stellar is something that I am just so proud to be a part of, because I think that this technology is offering opportunity for companies to create their own, to solve their problems, and then to create their own value to the communities and to themselves. So that I think just inherently is part of this journey that I'm super proud of. But I think I just love where we've come to from 2 years ago to today. From an organization standpoint, we were 12 when I started. I think we're 90 or
Wow.
plus, 90 plus now.
Wow.
During COVID, we were able to hire so many remarkable, talented individuals, and to really kind of shift through that change where we weren't together all the time in an office, and now we've been remote now for a year, and we've been able to do it fairly seamlessly. So I just love all of that. And I just actually wrote a blog post for my 2-year anniversary, and there's so many challenges that we've faced and been able to overcome, and also just so many like our strategic playbook that we've put together for the next couple of years is just, it's a lot, but it's just a journey that we really need to achieve. And I just love that we've been able to do that.
Well, congratulations. Those are, things that partnering with organizations outside and building relationships internally have been very difficult through this last year with COVID. And so the fact that you're able to stand there and say that we were able to get through this and even stronger, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable. All right, so what's next for the Stellar Development Foundation? peeked around on your roadmap, and I know it's, building more trust in the system and evangelizing it really, and developing use cases.
Yeah.
Where do you see, SDF going next?
So what we have is we've put together that roadmap, and our strategy is that in 10 years we have created a global payment standard. The notion of interoperability and to be able to create standards in this technology stack with lots of different chains that are out there that each have their own value is a really, really important thing to be able to do. One of the things that I think that we're going to continue to advocate for time and time again is that we don't actually create the challenges that exist on the content side of the web, where we have 5 companies that sort of own and control the content side. We want to actually have it so that there's continuously the opportunity to innovate and to be creative and to have change. And in order to do that, you need that interoperability and you need those standards. So we're constantly going to focus there. And right now, I think for the next, I'd say the next 3 years, our main focus is just on network effects. In fact, 2021 is our year for network effects. It is the year that we need to actually not just bring a lot of different participants to the network, but also create the value and the volume for those participants that are on the network. So that includes anchors, which are financial institutions. It
Yes.
includes wallets, and it includes folks who are solving problems like D-Stock, where you can buy blue chip stocks everywhere in the world because of this from your wallet. So we're going to just create and focus on those network effects and real growth in the ecosystem. And also, I mean, one of the things that's sort of table stakes for us is we need to have standards, we need to have security, we need to make sure the network handles the throughput. So we'll constantly be working with the community to improve the network as well throughout this process.
Wow. Well, last question. What advice do you have for our students that are going through, our female students, our women in IT professionals that we engage with our board member companies? Do you have any advice for women learning in this space?
So I'm gonna give some advice that my dad gave me when I was really young, and I was like in 3rd grade and decided that I wanted to be a lawyer. And no one in my family had ever gone to college. And my dad just said, "You can do whatever it is that you want to do. You just have to put your mind to it." And the truth is that sounds so quirky and simple, but the truth is that it is really following your instinct and following that intellectual, like the path that you want to get to. That I was constantly focused on just growth of knowledge. And I think that if everyone just sort of, whatever their instinct is, whatever their gut tells them that they should be doing, just push yourself in that direction, because you can do it. And reach out to other women in the tech space, whatever space that you're focused on, and they will support you, because that's part of what we need to do to be able to grow this space. And I think everyone sort of understands that now. So follow your instincts, don't limit yourself. And we all have that whole thing where we think that, people are going to find out that we don't know what we're doing. That's that we don't really understand anything. People all have that inside of them. So don't let that hinder you in terms of the journey that you want to be on. You can overcome it just by taking some deep breaths and pushing yourself through it. And that's one of the things that I think I wish someone had told me that, 20 years ago when I started doing all of these different things in my space. And I think that's the thing that I'd like people to really take away for themselves.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Denelle, and thank you for just being a joy to interview and being an example of a skilled and talented and compassionate leader for your organization. So we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I'm really honored to be here, and good luck to everyone who's watching this.